All right, and we're live. Welcome to another Friday Night Fire. For those of you that are tuning in live, thank you for so much. And if you're tuning in on the replay, that's awesome. We're gonna share some fire. We're gonna have some fun tonight. Matt Koenig here on my left. That's right, Bridge Services. Let's go.
What's up, Bridge Services? Good to see you.
So as we get into tonight's show, for those of you guys that have been tuning in, just a quick recap. Do us a favor, if you're watching live, share the show out. And then at the end of the show, certainly, if you know of somebody that could gain something from this message, because we're really trying to have some conversations and be able to impact some people and make some changes. Lots of times people are sharing their thoughts and their comments in the side. And Matt and I easily get off track. What up, Anthony? Good to see you tonight, dude.
Hey, Anthony in the house.
So we will often head down the rabbit hole with you. We're okay with that. Like, it's cool.
Yeah, it's like the Matrix.
As we said, the key to this is making sure that it's motivation, it's inspiration, it's faith-based foundation, and a lot of conversation with Matt Koenig and I. So
you're sounding like Kirk Franklin. Remember Kirk Franklin and God's Property back in the day?
Way back in the day. Yeah, that was what, mid-90s?
Late 90s, early 2000s, yeah. GP, are you with me?
Yeah. Oh, my gosh, dude. We used to do a Christian music night at the roller skating rink, and we'd rock that out. Heck yeah, dude. It's awesome. So, hey, as for the people that are coming in, do me a favor. So right up to this show, Matt was saying prayers.
I was saying prayers, dude.
He had prayers.
It's been a crazy 24 hours, my man.
So tell us about it.
So our grandson was born. So we flew to Michigan. Yes, Oliver Daniel. Thank you. He's adorable, just adorable. He looks like a little scrunchy old man, like all babies look.
All babies do.
He's so darn cute. So we went to see him, and my other son Liam, my son Cullen, his wife Emily, my daughter-in-law, and then my son Liam, and my daughter-in-law Sabrina, and my daughter Jill. So and our other grandson Christopher. So we went and visited some family. We hung out with some friends, and then yesterday we got to the airport in Kalamazoo to fly home so that we would get home by 10:30. So we get to the airport at 3, and the plane breaks, mechanical failure.
Oh, no.
So we finally get on the plane at 7:10, and I say to them before we get on, hey, our connection in Detroit boards at 8. So this is going to go hand in hand with what we're talking about tonight with lies, okay?
Yeah, little light.
The airport, this is the last flight out for the night, so they want to close Kalamazoo Airport and get everybody out there. And I say to them, look, our flight boards at 8. It departs at 8:40. I know we come in to C. We got to run a mile and a half to A. I said, look, if we're not going to make our connection, how about you just put us on the morning flight, and that way we could just stay in Kalamazoo. No, you're totally going to make it. I go, totally? Really? Because it's 6:50 right now, and nobody's even boarded because they still have a thing hooked up trying to fix the plane. Like, don't worry. Even if we get in the air by 7:10, you're going to make it. It's a 17-minute flight in the air. I'm like, it never works that way. It really doesn't. I'm like, and not your guys' fault, but, and they're like, we got this. You're going to be fine. Well, they board us at 7. We get on the tarmac, and over and over, hey, it's only another 5 or 10 minutes, folks. We're going to be in the air. We got in the air at 8 p.m. when our connecting flight was boarding. Then when we landed, we had to wait because they had to move us to a different gate. So by the time we got off the plane, It was 8:39 p.m., which is when our flight was taking off, our connection. So,
Yeah. What time was the connection?
8:40 was departure. 8:10 was boarding, or
Well,
8 o'clock.
You had like a minute to. And where were
To
you?
go a mile
You were,
and a half. And listen, I'm down 20 pounds, so I should have been able to do it.
absolutely. High knees, dude. You got a high knees move. It's like that old football.
But I'll tell you, it was frustrating because I gave them an out and an opportunity to just go, yeah, you know what, we're not going to be able to get there. And we would have we weren't even asking for them to pay for our room, once we missed the connection, they had to. But I was just like, we'll pay for our own room. Then we'll get to see family more. We'll go have dinner with kids or something. Long story too long. By the time we got to bed last night, it was 1 o'clock in the morning. We had to be up at 5:15 a.m. Michigan time, which is 2:15 my time here in Washington where I live. So basically, I've been up since 2:15 a.m. and we were on a 5-hour flight home after spending 2.5 hours in the airport this morning. And I was waiting for this webcam to get delivered, which got delivered literally 4 minutes before we started the show. Yep. So here we are. But it's crystal clear and everything's working. God is good.
It's great.
And now we're going to talk about lies, man.
Well, and here's the thing. Literally, I said to Matt, I texted him, or I guess I text messaged you because we were going between. I didn't know if he's getting the stuff. I'm like, hey, man, I said, you've got to make sure that you get on for at least like 30 seconds just so we can sound check it. So we get on, and this is going perfectly, right? It's absolutely – I'm like, dude, the cam looks good. The sound is good. And then literally right before we're going live, his sound cuts out.
It was perfect.
So what we were going to do is I was just going to speak the whole show and have to lip sync if that's what we had to do.
Look, right? If Milli Vanilli could make it work, I don't see why we can't.
Why couldn't we?
Listen,
so speaking of the white lies, big lies. Hey, so shout out real quick. Shout out to Cody Stovall. And for my people that are watching this, for my friends, and I don't think Matt knows Cody personally. Cody's going through some stuff right now. Cody is in the hospital, and I know the people that watch this show, a lot of the people will end up having probably, 30, 40 people go through here tonight. This is our third show. But I know that most of you are praying types. And so please keep Cody in your thoughts and prayers. Because speaking of where he put on there, I always do the high knees. He's got some struggles going through with his legs right now. We went and visited him today. One of the most positive and upbeat, inspirational dudes that I know. Seriously, he's a phenomenal dude. So make sure you guys keep him in your prayers. So I have to guess, and this is a guess, that Bridge Services is my buddy John, because he made the comment, sorry, his Rona's acting up. They were going to ask me tonight. He asked specifically, he said, while we're doing the show, are we going to be wearing masks? I said, dude, we're in like totally different sides of the world. And he says, well, you should be promoting it as influencers. You should be wearing a mask. And I said, well, I don't know if we're going to get into sharing that.
I'll tell you, with a blood clot in my lungs and wearing a mask for 7 hours today, I'm gonna influence you guys by saying, look, wear a mask, follow the rules, because the rules are there. When you're at home, no. Do whatever you want. Look, if you feel like wearing a mask when you're live, God bless you. Wear it when you're live. I'm not, because I need to breathe. Bruce said, "Ooh, does that count as a white lie?" Hey, you know what though? You brought up something good, and I don't want to miss it. But since you brought up Cody being in the hospital, dude. Hey, how about I'll throw down a prayer. Let's pray for Cody real quick.
Let's do it, man. He's got a blood clot in his leg, and he needs all the prayers. So, Cody,
that's what I had. That moved to my lung.
Are you going to lead us, Mr. Matt?
Sure, let's do it.
Absolutely.
God, we know you are a God of healing, and there's nothing beyond you. We thank you for the doctors, the wisdom you give them to bring us healing. We thank you for the medicine that you've allowed people to create. Lord, we pray over Cody tonight. You say you call us to gather together in prayer over each other for healing. And God, we know when two or more are gathered, your presence is there, and there's more than two here. So we just ask for your healing over Cody. We ask that you heal that blood clot and just bring him back better than ever before. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen, Cody. Bring it home, dude. And if for anybody who has talked to this guy, you can't even imagine. Anthony was there with me today. Anthony, who's on the stream. It's like he is I don't know how he does it, dude. Keeps the positivity. So getting into tonight's episode, we're only 15 minutes in here, so let's roll this. So tonight we're going to explore the Bible. We talked about, yes meaning yes. We talked about the effect of little white lies. And Matt and I always have some conversations back and forth. We kick this back and forth. And he brought up a really good point. He says, what about the like little white lies that we don't think they really harm anybody, right? Or we don't get the view that they harm anyone. So I'll let you expand on it, Matt. So jump in here, man.
So here's what brought this up. My wife and I were having a talk. My wife Dara and I, when Corona stuff happened, youth group had to go to Instagram. And the challenge, and nobody even thought of this, right? But so youth group had to go to Instagram. So they had all the kids create Instagram accounts, right? But then we happen to be talking about honesty and integrity and going, well, where's the line on that, right? Like, where's the line on like what's truth and what's not truth? And it brought up the thought that it's like with no malintention. There's kids that are 11 and 12, right, in the youth group. And
right, absolutely.
They needed to get an Instagram account so they could, be part of like the live and the dialogue and stuff like that. And so they, just changed their birthday. No big deal, right? But I love you too, babe. So then it got us talking, like,
Were you talking to me? The I love you too?
I do love you too, Mike.
I was just checking.
But that got us talking about, like, well, where is that? Where's that limit though? Like, what? It's either okay or it's not okay, right? And so to go, well, but I lied for the sake of youth group, because to connect, and there's no harm in it, right? It's not like there's like somebody was hurt by it in that moment, but every time we just kind of talked about, like, every time we bend the truth a little, like, how much are we conditioning ourselves to, like, bending it a little further and bending it a little further? So that's kind of what got us started on it, was like, what are those things, like, people like, how do I look? Oh, you look great. And then somebody looks at themselves and like, geez, I don't feel like I look great. I look like crap. It's like, well, you don't want to be mean and be like, oh, you look like crap. But if you know somebody may not like something, like, what do you say? Like, oh, I don't know. How do you think you like? I always think you look great, but how do you feel? Right? Like, where does it begin? And I biblically, I'll tell you where it began. But so that's what sparked this whole thing, was the Instagram deal going. It didn't hurt anybody, but are we conditioning our children that a little bitty lie is okay? And then are we trusting them to discern what's a little bitty lie? Right.
Well, and then it's a man-made definition, right? We were talking right before. Here's the thing. When you talk about the Instagram thing, the Instagram, like, hey, well, you need to have an Instagram for the youth group. And when you're talking about getting an Instagram for the youth group, so you're starting it with the best of intentions. You're starting it under the premise that it is something to serve God, right? Mm-hmm. But the rules are the rules. So are there other opportunities? Is there an opportunity for them to connect on Zoom or another platform that doesn't require a full sign up, that doesn't require them to offer the little white lie, to be 13 years old? And the reason I say that is because, though it started with the best of intention, you said, well, where do you draw the line? Well, once that
the line at honesty.
Well, but though it started with the best of intention, I'm starting with this 10, 11, 12-year-old on Instagram, and I don't know why the magic number is 13, or then why the magic number is
kind of silly to me, actually.
21 for things. But you start out with this, okay, well, they're going to have this Instagram account. Keep in mind, for the parents that are doing things like that, the youth group is not the only entity on Instagram.
And there's the thing, and you said a really, really powerful statement, right? Because it's well intended, because it's for something with God. But let me take that to a different level, right? Let's say we're talking to somebody who wants to know about Jesus. Okay, so what if you kind of stretch the truth about some of the stuff he did? Like, well, but it got them to get interested in Jesus. Yeah, but you weren't honest. Like, but for the sake of the cross. No, like, well, did you know then he was in an outer spaceship? It's in the Bible. It's in the Apocrypha. It's not in there, but aliens. Like, we can infer things that have no biblical backing and say, well, for the sake of, And so that's where this whole dialogue, it's like the first lie in the Bible was so subtle, just so subtle, but so powerful.
So let's talk about it for the people that are watching here. And I'm just curious because now before we go there, I'm going to ask you another question. Before we go there, I want to ask you another question.
Okay.
You shared the comment as we're talking about these little white lies. You shared the comment. You said, well, if somebody says, how do I look? Right. And you say, hey, you look great. And they look and they're saying, well, I don't feel like I look great. Some of that, though, is that a lie or is that just a difference of opinion and perception?
Fair.
So, I mean, now, granted, there are times that's a lie, right? I get what you're saying. But most of the time, it's like on something like that, we're looking through rose-colored glasses for the people that would ask us that. So, like when you're saying, and going back to an actual, truth versus lie, what's the first lie in the Bible, Matt?
So let's go right at it. So in Genesis chapter 3, I'm going to read this. Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, let me back it up to Genesis chapter 2, the end of it. Okay. So, Genesis chapter 2, not the end of it, but, let's see. Grass sprouted, Garden of Eden, Just getting to the point here. Hold on. Okay, Genesis chapter 2, and I'm going to read from the Message because it's just so much more delightful to read.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
It says, God commanded the man, you can eat from any tree in the garden except from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Don't eat from it. The moment you eat from it, you're dead, right? So for those that aren't familiar with the scripture that we're talking about, basically when God created man, he didn't create man to have an expiration date. Right? He created us to eternally be with him. And we are now, but the physical body wasn't supposed to have an expiration date. So God said, look, you can eat from anything in this garden except this one tree. Don't eat from it, because if you do, you're dead. You're gonna have an expiration date in your life. Genesis chapter 3, and then it goes on, but Genesis chapter 3 starts with the serpent was clever, more clever than any of the wild animals God made, and he spoke to the woman. So he spoke to Eve. And he said, do I understand? And this is where the little...
Did God say?
He goes, do I understand that God told you not to eat from any tree in the garden? Like, the subtlety of that right there. Did he tell you not to eat from any tree? And the funny thing was, she immediately recognized the lie. But notice he didn't approach it as a lie and say, hey, you're not allowed to. He said, hey, did God say this? Like he backed into the lie with a question. And even she goes, whoa, no, not at all. We can eat from any trees. It's only the tree in the middle that he said, don't eat or touch because you'll die. And then the serpent goes, you won't die. Now that was the boom, like the very direct lie, right? So, you won't die. God knows the moment you eat from that tree, you'll see what's really going on. You'll be just like God, knowing anything, ranging all the way from good to evil. So it starts with a question that seems so innocent, like, did I hear he said you can't eat anything? Like, did I hear God's going to starve you to death? Like,
no, here's what's crazy. And you and I haven't talked about this. I've been reading through this little book here called The Jesus Code. Have you ever read this? Okay. So the Jesus Code, the opening, I got to show you this for a second. The opening chapter in it, and it talks about help in understanding the Bible. The opening chapter, I don't know if you can read that, has God indeed said.
Love it.
And that is, it comes in, literally, it comes in.
It said, is that a New King James?
No, it's not a New King James. It's a book written by someone. It says 52 scripture questions every believer should understand. And it dives into
the New Living Translation, right? Is your preferred?
My preferred is a New Living Translation. I have this one here, but it's a different books. So Anthony, so just like you're saying, and Matt and I, the irony is Matt and I have not talked about this prior to, because we're 4 minutes before the show. Let's go. Right?
It's been a busy week.
But we have these views, and so it's the opening thing. It says, has God indeed said? So it's just enough to plant the doubt. It's just enough to start the question. And so Anthony asked a good question here. Can I throw this up on the screen? Did you see this?
Do it up.
So Anthony says, so I've been thinking lately about Jesus and how he might try to tell the truth lovingly and constructively without being duplicitous. So if you're trying not to be two-faced, but what you're thinking you shouldn't say, what is the best way to proceed? Do you need to work on what you say or how you think?
Man, so if here's the honest answer from me, probably both. Right? Like, I mean, the Bible says, from the heart is what, comes out of the mouth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the reality is, thank you for that question, because it's solid. And truth in love is a statement I've heard a lot of times in the church, right? But it's not always delivered that way. Truth in love. Like, when we're communicating something important with somebody, not all truth is easy to have a conversation about, right? I've had conversations with people that are married and they were having an affair. And having to say, have that come to Jesus meeting, right? To say,
come to Jesus, literally.
Yeah, like, bro, like, what are you doing? Like, what in the heck are you doing, right? Like, it doesn't. Well, but I feel. I don't care how. I mean, like, I care about you, but I don't care how you feel. This isn't okay, right? Like, we need to have this talk.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, though, like, there are loving ways to communicate the truth, but sometimes, no matter how much love you have, it doesn't feel good to hear the truth. But that's the wrestling match I think a lot of us have, is like, well, I don't want to. Like, sometimes it's, hey, I don't want to talk about topic X because I know these friends of mine, it's going to hurt their feelings if I address it. But I love them, and I'm not angry at them, and I'm not hurting them, but they're going to perceive it a certain way. So sometimes we just suspend dialogue that is truthful, but sometimes we suspend it because it's not a necessary dialogue to have with them, right? And so that's not a lie. But then there's sometimes where we'll have a friend ask us directly. Like, I'll give you a good example. A buddy of mine who's an atheist, who got, I guess, I don't know that it's ordination. He got approved by the state to be able to marry people. Okay. And he is, I would actually say, I would say he's more of an agnostic than an atheist, but he calls himself an atheist. And he said, listen, I don't know that I can believe in a God who doesn't think it's okay for my friends to be married, who were two women. And I'm like, dude, so I have friends who are gay. I love them. I'm like, so what does that have to do with believing in God? Like, like, do your mom believe you can't say a cuss word? Do you not believe in your mom just because she's got a rule you don't think? Like, I don't believe my mom exists now because she doesn't want me to say the F word. No, you don't stop believing in your mom because she's got a rule you don't like. You just acknowledge the fact that, you know what? I'm glad that God has a lot of grace, because I'm not judging this person on their life, because I've still got to get the plank out of my eye for my lifestyles choices that I make. That, dude, Dara and I talk about this all the time. I am the worst at, okay, and that always sticks in my head when Jesus said, "You've heard it said, don't kill." But I tell you this: if you even say if you even call your brother an idiot, you're tap dancing on the edge of hell. Mm-hmm. And I am that guy that when you ride my butt and I'll tap the brakes and you don't back off, I'm like, what is this freaking idiot doing? I'm like, oh God, I'm sorry. I know I call her to stop that. And that might seem so little and stupid to some people, but guess what? There are 10 commandments. First 5, our relationship with God. Next 5, our relationship with each other. I am certain in some way, based on how Jesus explained them, I have broken every single one in some way. So I am not going to look at my friend who is gay and go, well, you're going to hell. I'm going to go, I'm so glad for the grace of God that Jesus' blood covered our sins. But if my friend goes, okay, what do you think? What do you think? Like, I'm gay, so what do you think that means to me in the Bible? I'm not going to not say the truth. I'm going to say, the Bible says homosexuality is a sin. You know what else it says is a sin? Sex out of marriage. So guess what? We're both in the same boat. Love you, bro.
You know what else is a sin? Lies. It doesn't, like as we're talking tonight, it doesn't. There's not a rating system, right? Well, hey, you said this lie, and that's like a 1 or 2. The Instagram age thing, that's like a 2, right? But lying to the spouse, the adultery thing, that's like a 10. So
You shall put the snickers, that's like a 6.
Yeah. Sex out of marriage, that's like a 3.2, right? On the Jesus scale. Speaking of which, I got your correspondent. Did you see my correspondent things? So it's like I'm tapped right in.
I'm not gonna lie, I feel like you're way cooler than me with those.
I wish I felt way cooler. I think you're way cooler than me in general. So going back to Anthony's question,
you're not supposed to lie. We just talked about that.
That's not a lie, dude. You arranged the Rockstar conferences. Are you kidding me? Right
I love you, Mike.
I get all defensive. Like, no.
Oh, dude. Yeah. So Anthony, go back to that, bro.
He says directly, what's the best way to proceed? Do you need to work on what you say or how you think?
What do you think, Mike?
I think that, you should be tactful in what you say, but you should temper what you say, but don't temper the truth.
Ooh, that's strong. You should say
Write that down.
You should say that again.
Yeah. So somebody type that in the sidebar. Temper what you say, but don't temper the truth. And the reason is because people need to hear the truth. And the reality is, even if the truth is not something they want to hear, it is probably something they need to hear and need to know. And ultimately, if it's the truth, if truth is truth, it's going to be accepted by them.
You said something important, though, and tempering how. And also, I think it's important to remember we need to temper when. Because it's not just what and how, but it's also when. Because here's the deal, right? Gluttony is a sin. I'm trying to lose weight because I have really struggled with, it was only this year I just finally, I'm addicted to just overeating and snacking. If I'm bored, I would eat, right? So now I'm like not doing that. Now we're actually switching back to pretty much a plant-based diet, but that's a whole different show for why we're doing that. But here's the thing is gluttony is a sin, right? But I don't want someone just walking up to me going, "Hey, dude, you're fat. You're a glutton." Okay, but it's true that I'm overweight, but that doesn't mean someone needs to run up and yell the truth. Like, "Hey, fatty," you know what I mean? Like, "Hey, you are at least 90 pounds over your ideal weight because you're 5'9". So just because something is true doesn't mean that we need to say it. Number one. And Anthony just said the truth, though, as you see it, does that make it the truth? And the answer is no. And so, no, the answer is this. Now I'm going to answer your question the best way Jesus did, I think. And that is this. Anthony, where do you find absolute truth? Where is the moral law that defines what is truth? And that answers your question. Because as Mike, you and I were talking last week, right? How we were raised, there are things that are true to us because of the environment that we're in, but that doesn't make it a universal truth. And so that's thank you, Bridge Services. Actually, I use my FitnessPal now, so I track everything that goes in my mouth, including how many ounces of water. I'm doing it and it's working. So thanks.
So terrible at tracking water, man. I am terrible at tracking water. Probably because I drinking water.
Every time I drink one of these, then I'm like, boom, 40 ounces. Goals 3 of them a day. Yeah, so just because it's true doesn't mean we have to run around saying it, because that's where you get into bullhorn guy, right? That scares away everybody from church. The guy stands in the corner, right? That's yelling all of the Old Testament stuff. That is still true, but Jesus helped us understand it better by communicating in a different way. But somebody's walking by and if you don't know God, you're going to spend an eternity apart from him in hell. And it's like, have you been there? Do you know that?
How do you know?
Doesn't it say for God so loved the world? It doesn't say for God so loved the Christian in the short sleeve shirt with a tie and a bullhorn that he sent his only son. It's not how the verse is written.
I don't remember a whole lot of stipulations on that verse. There wasn't, it was right. Just God so loved the world.
That seems like that was pretty cut and dry one.
So as we're going through this, one of the things I wanted to share too, when we were talking, because, trying to keep Matt and I on task, it can be like herding cats. And please keep putting the questions in. Anthony, you offered a good one. Dara said over here on Facebook, she said, yes, sin is sin. It's all wrong. It's all wrong. Sin is sin. It's very, simple and straightforward. So one of the things is we got into discussing this, and we're saying, okay, hey, lying's a huge issue for people, including Christians. It's lying is a problem for people. It's not, well, your lie is worse than mine. We kind of started to get into that earlier, right? And one of the struggles, it's most tempting to lie when we feel it will benefit us. And we think, well, it's going to benefit us and it's not going to hurt anybody else. So I'm just going to say this small little white lie. And we start to justify it, as we were talking beforehand, that it's like, we even gave it a term. Oh, well, it's a white lie, right? So it's like the riding it on the white horse type of deal. Like it's okay.
Black and white TV. The bad guys always wore black. The good guys wore white. That's how you told them apart.
And so we labeled it as humans. Versus in the Bible, it's very cut and dry. Leviticus 19, I brought this in, and it talks about holiness and our personal conduct. It has all kinds of reminders in Leviticus on how we should conduct ourselves, and almost all of them are regularly overlooked. And the reason that they're overlooked is because we come up with justification as humans as to why it's okay. We try and skirt that. Matt made a comment here a few minutes ago where he says, well, God so loved the world that he gave his only son. It's cut and dry. So are the rest of the rules if you read them, and we all have to, we as humans, either put them into context, or we try to, depending on how you view it, call it how it is, right? We start to justify. We start to, including, Christian pastors, Christian people. We put our own spin on it. And I think one of the reasons that happens, I've been accused of this personally on my Mornings with Mike show, where I share a Bible verse and I share how it's affecting me in the moment. And I've had people challenge me and say, well, that's not how he meant it. That's not what it was supposed to be like. And it's like, well, hold on. I'm not trying to proclaim by any means to be an expert on this subject. I think we're constantly, for anybody who is rooted in their faith, you're constantly learning. And the reality is this, if you read the same verse of the Bible at a different time in your life, it is going to speak to you differently. It doesn't mean, and here's a spin or a twist, because like I even set up on the thumbnail, is it lying? It doesn't mean that, well, God was lying to me before. What I read in the Bible, I feel like I was lying to myself to justify it. It simply means it's speaking to you differently because you're at a high point in your life, a low point in your life, all these different things. If you're at a low point in your life, you're going to do more to justify your actions, your activities, the lies that you tell, versus if you're at a high point in your life and everything's going well, we'll often be harder on ourselves and say, yeah, it's cut and dry.
Well, it's like Anthony said, isn't this kind of where white lies come from? Half-truths and harmless omissions for whatever reason to save someone's feelings. And that's the thing, is there's so many reasons we will justify an omission, right? Dr. Phil even says, lying by omission. That was my Dr. Phil impression.
That's a really good Dr. Phil.
It's not as good as I really want it to be, but I don't have the mustache.
Oh wait, that was a little white lie. That was it.
But that's what he says, man. He's he talks about it a lot. He's like, you're lying by omission. And the thing is, we do tend to do stuff like that to preserve someone's feelings, right? I'm not going to pretend that I've never done it. That would be a lie, right? Like, here's the thing. Yeah. I've lied a bunch in my life. But you know what I find interesting? So let's look in Proverbs, okay? And I'm going to pull it up here. Proverbs 19.
19, verse 5 or verse 9? I know where you're headed, bro.
What I'm wishing was this magazine would stop acting slower than molasses in January. Well, here's the thing. Proverbs 19 starts by saying, it's better to be poor and honest than a rich person no one can trust. So interesting, right there at the beginning, hey, better be poor and honest. Like, the immediate thing is like, it's better to be an honest person And then you get to 5, and the message says perjury, but basically it says, a lie's not going to go unpunished. Perjury won't go unpunished. Would you let a liar go free? That's in verse 5. And then it continues, and then down in verse 9, the person who tells lies gets caught. The person who spreads rumors is ruined. This whole thing, though, if you notice, every time it's like, hey, don't you realize when you do this, you're not just hurting others, you're hurting yourself. And that's where it goes back to, like, it seems so little with like the Instagram thing. But we're hurting when we allow our children to tell little white lies. When we tell little white lies, we're hurting our character. We're doing damage to ourselves because we're behaving in a way so much less worthy of who God created us to be. And lies aren't the only thing, but that sets the stage for us. You know what I mean? And like I said, I've done it to protect myself. I've done it in the vein of protecting others. But it's damaging. It's damaging to others. It's damaging to our character. And, when you get caught up in a lie, nobody trusts you after that. And that sucks.
Well, that's the hard part, is coming back from that. And, on the thing where you're talking about, like, it's damaging to our character when we allow our kids to do it. What happens is, false witness will not go unpunished, nor liar escape. So that's, Proverbs 19:5, as you were just saying here. So what happens is we go in, like the Instagram, the youth group Instagram thing, I think is a fantastic example because, again, we're going against, these are man-made rules, right? And so we're trying to do it under the justification of, well, we want these kids to be able to see and serve God. So we build this Instagram group. There's other avenues. We mentioned that. So they sign up for it. Well, a liar will not escape. So what will happen is the enemy, and we are under attack. For anybody who doesn't think we're under attack right now as Christians and good versus evil right now in the world, in my opinion, it's there. It's right there. And so what happens where it says a liar will not escape, or a liar, it goes as far, again, depending on the translation, Proverbs 19:9 is a liar will be destroyed. That actually uses the word destroyed as the translation. And so what happens is then they start to go outside of the youth group. They start to seek, hey, what else is out here on Instagram? Like, hey, that's kind of cool. And because the parents are sidetracked doing other stuff, now they're not just involved in the youth group, they're involved in whatever other activities that Instagram has to offer. And I know the junk that I get on Instagram, some of it is terrible. And so what happens is, like you're saying, it does not just damaging to our character, it becomes damaging to our legacy.
And your soul, man. It's a weighty thing. Like, because we carry the sin that we live out, right? The bad things we do, the mistakes we make. There's such thing as repenting, because righteously you feel like, I have done something wrong. God, I'm sorry. Help me clean my life up. And then there's shame, right? There's a difference between feeling a righteous guilt for what we've done and repenting, and the shame that the enemy puts on us. Because the enemy wants us to feel shame, because shame makes us feel unworthy. Shame makes us feel unwanted, unloved. And that's that warfare that you were just going at. It's like that when we carry shame from sin, like a lie, the enemy will keep whispering that in the back of your head. Yeah, but remember when you did this?
Absolutely. When we end up then with guilt, shame, frustration, we end up replaying that over and over and over. So oftentimes when people, whether intentional or not, we share something that we think is justified, or we share something that we think we can make it through, and what happens, I think, in our psyche, in the human psyche, it doesn't just get played out one time. We relive it if it's something that's outside of our normal character, and so it becomes magnified. It becomes so big. that all of a sudden, and here's one of the ironies, or kind of on the outside, I may be reaching here, but it becomes so big that then that becomes the focus, instead of keeping our focus on God and what is right and our families and all of the things that he has told us over time to focus on. So then all of a sudden we get wrapped up in this thing that started out as something so small. And then on the flip side of that, you started out with this small little white light, whatever it may be. Oh gosh, yeah, no, we can't. Who hasn't done this one, right? I can tell you, I've attended this. Yeah, we're not able to make it tonight. I'm not feeling well, right? Or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Because rather than just being honest with somebody and saying, hey, that's something I don't want to go do tonight. Whatever. If it's going out to dinner, going to hang out with friends, we feel like for some reason we've got to give this justification. We can't just tell them the truth. Hey, yeah, I don't want to go. Like, I love you as a person. I love you as a friend. Tonight's just not good. Like, that would be an acceptable answer to most normal people. But we start to justify, because like Anthony was saying earlier, we don't want to hurt their feelings. So it's like, oh gosh, no, can't make it, not feeling really well. And so then all of a sudden what happens is those are those little times we start to manifest it, and we're like, oh my gosh, I hope I hope they don't see
I got
that.
to remember not to check in on Facebook that I went somewhere else instead.
Oh my gosh, I hope I don't run into them at the grocery store. And we end up literally worrying ourselves into sickness. And so then the next day, guess what happens? You end up not feeling well. And they're like, oh my gosh, I hope you feel better. And you're thinking, I did this to myself ultimately. It's almost like you manifested it, right?
You said something funny. You said you can't handle the truth, which made me think of A Few Good Men.
A Few Good Men.
Where he's like, you want the truth, you can't handle the truth. But you know what's funny is in John chapter 8, when Jesus is talking to the religious leaders, and you get down to verses 42 through 47. He says, if God were your father, you'd love me, for I came from God and arrived here. I didn't come on my own. He sent me. Why can't you understand a word I say? Here's why you can't handle it. And here's why I'm about to read this verse.
You want the truth?
You can't. But here's why I'm going to read this. Because we see a good example of this right now in the media, the news. And I'm not going to go political or partisan on this. I'm just going to say we see an example of this when we get committed to a belief one way or the other, and then actual facts surface. You see people still going, I don't care. And they stay their path because they're not interested in truth. They're interested in feeling justified in their behavior. And Jesus addressed this specifically. And John said, after Jesus says, you can't handle it, he said, you're from your father, the devil, and all you want to do is please him. He was a killer from the very start. This is the strong part to me. He couldn't stand the truth because there wasn't a shred of truth in him. When the liar speaks, he makes it up out of his lying nature and fills the world with his lies. I arrive on the scene, tell you the plain truth, and you refuse to have a thing to do with me. Can you convict me of a single misleading word or sinful act? But if I'm telling the truth, why don't you believe me? Anyone on God's side listens to God's word. And I think part of the problem we have is when we're trying to justify things to people, we're not using God's word. We're not using Jesus' love, because we're so interested in winning an argument or getting someone to buy into our side that we lose sight of the fact that we just need to be interested in the truth. And sometimes the truth is to go, you know what? I'm watching the same news as you, and I don't know. But here's what I do know. Nobody's perfect, and we should be praying for all the people involved. And that's about the extent of what I know. Now, there's a difference between saying, I choose to believe this based on what I've read, and saying, I know for a fact. And we get caught up often fighting our battles, not in truth, but in belief. Absolutely. And they're not the same thing.
No, well, interestingly, my wife and I have had these conversations. Brooke and I because a lot of times when other humans pass judgment on us, I shared something on my Facebook the other day, and it said something along the lines of like, hey, when someone's passing judgment on you, that's because of them. It's not because of you. And one of the comments that I shared with her in the past, we've had this conversation. I said, one of the things you got to understand, like the truth doesn't require justification. The truth can just be the statement. So when you're talking to somebody and you say, hey, look, here's the factual data. Now, that doesn't mean the truth can't be challenged, but unless somebody provides alternative information to what the truth is, to what's provided, the truth can stand on its own. And so, I was talking with actually a new friend of mine today. I met him in person today. We've been connected on LinkedIn. I met him today. His name's Joe. And we were talking and he asked we had just met and he'd seen my show. And I said, he asked me an opinion. And he says, well, how would you handle this? And I said, well, it's simple. Once you've taken your side and you've explained that to that person, if the person wants to argue with you, you want to know the quickest way to end any argument, because you're going to have a view, they're going to have an opposing view. And it's very simple. When they say, well, here's my opposing view. If you don't know whether that is accurate or not, you don't have any additional information, here's your response. It will end any argument. And for anybody watching this, I know this is maybe off the beaten path of where we started, but it'll end any argument. They say, well, this is how I see it. And you go, okay. That's it. You say, okay, just take in what they have to say. All you have to do is acknowledge that what they have to say carries importance. It may be their worldview, it may be fact, it may be belief, but when they've said it to you, if you don't have something to contradict that on your own, you just go, okay, and then take the time to go and find out. Take the time to go and research. Take it upon yourself, if you want to find the truth, to go seek the truth.
Dude, you said something a minute ago that just stood out, and it made me think of someone who he's Jewish, very devout Jewish person, very not always liked. His name is Ben Shapiro.
I do know Ben Shapiro. I've heard of him.
Yeah, and he says this: facts don't care about your feelings.
Absolutely.
And that's where truth comes in. We want the truth to be subjective to our feelings. We want to say, but I feel this way. And it's like, you have the right to feel that way, but that doesn't make it true. Like, I might feel that whatever. I might feel, person A is like the greatest political leader in the universe. I loved Ronald Reagan when I was a kid because he was always funny. He always made me smile.
I love Ronald Reagan. He's the best president, in my opinion.
Thank you. In my mind, I say the same thing. Now, there are a ton of people that break down all these different things that say, but here's why he's not, right? Now, listen, I'm not going to go back to the 80s and dig up all these facts and see if they're right or not. So me saying, hey, he's the best president ever, that doesn't make it the truth. It just makes it what I believe. And sure. I think that we all need to get better at acknowledging that, and that just because we believe something doesn't make it true. And it's okay to believe something and not know for sure. It's okay to go, hey, we can agree to disagree because neither of us know for certain. When people get all mad about masks and things like that, it's like CDC says this, then the WHO says that, and they contradict each other. And it's like, but this is true.
On the street says.
Yeah, and then it's like, okay, so Mike, are you a virologist? No, I'm not either. So you choose to believe this, and I choose to believe that. And guess what? It's okay if we disagree. I can still love you. We can still disagree. Who cares? I'm still going to be respectful anyway and follow the law, even if I disagree with it, man. I disagree with the fact that the speed limit is only 70 when a car can do 140. But that doesn't mean I'm going to do 140.
But you have in the past.
Yeah. That's why I have had some tickets, and that was a different point in life.
So it's funny that you bring up the virus thing and so forth, because I think we're all learning about it, right? And there is some level of truth in everybody's belief system right now pertaining to that. Now, I try so hard not to get into Facebook debates because they don't change anybody's opinion. They don't. Yes. They don't. What may change somebody's opinion is when we're sharing like the stuff from the Bible. Like, this is good stuff to me. We're sharing something from the Bible. You can go look it up. You can form your own belief and opinion, and hopefully that brings somebody closer to God. And those are the sorts of things that I know when you and I have talked, like, we want to make an impact on that. So I try not to get involved in these conversations, but I did get involved in a conversation, and the gal came out and she asked me the question. She goes, "Oh, well, what year did you get your degree in epidemiology?" Right? And I'm like, I said, so to answer your question very directly, I didn't. I said, however, and this is a legitimate statement, because she's like, "Oh, well, you seem to know so much." So I said, I didn't. And I said, but I've done quite a bit of research. I have friends that are locally that are doctors, that are virologists, right? Locally here, that I've spoken with personally, face to face, not somebody that is a correspondent somewhere. So
I love that you have those. I'm super jealous. I'm not going to lie.
So I've spoken to people. I've asked my own personal doctor his opinion, who'll remain nameless on here and so forth. And collectively, I have formed a conclusion that I feel is right based on our limited knowledge. And her response was, "Oh, so education by osmosis." And I said, "Well, no, because osmosis would be simply," I said, "osmosis seems more like what you're doing, scrolling through Facebook and picking up, oh, hey, I absorbed that through this news media outlet." I said, "Maybe you're not aware of how the education system works. Education is actually listening to fact and opinion from acknowledged experts, such as doctors, who have an average of 12 years of formal education before they take their first patient." And I said, and being able to accept them as a teacher and formulate an opinion. I said, so yeah, do I have 6 months worth of education on the matter? Yeah. And ultimately, here's what I've concluded. At this moment, that doesn't mean I might not be wrong. It doesn't mean that my opinion may not change. But that's where it sits right now on September 25th. So Bridge Services asked a question too, says, and I know we probably passed through this. Hey, Nancy, how are you tonight? It's nice to see you. So Bridge Services says, though what degree of social bluntness is acceptable differs from place to place. Do you think this contributes in any way? So I think what he was referring to, he put this up a little bit ago, and we've been cruising along throughout. And says, do we think it contributes? So like when we were talking about truth and as far as, tempering the truth or tempering what we say and how blunt should we be with someone. And so he refers to that conversation, says bluntness is acceptable in different levels, place to place. Do we think it contributes to that?
I think there's a difference between a truth and bluntness, right? Like sometimes you're being blunt and telling the truth. Sometimes you're being blunt and being a dick. That's just it,
We're live.
I did say that, and God probably thinks there's a nicer way I could have said it. But here's the thing: it's just like truth is we should all be eating healthier. Truth is I'm overweight. Truth is if you're overweight, if you're obese, if you're unhealthy, if you've got health issues, you should remember your body's a temple. We should shift gears, switch to eating more plant-based, right? Stop putting poison in our bodies, right? That's truth. But you don't run around and tell every person that is overweight, hey, you're fat, start eating more vegetables, you're going to die, you big slob. And you don't go tell someone who is skinny, like super skinny and underweight, hey, you're so skinny, you're probably going to be sick and die. You don't know if they're dealing with depression. You don't know if they have an immune disease. You don't know. And even if they don't, it's none of your business, right? Like if you're friends with someone, if you have a relationship, and you see that something doesn't feel right, you can say, hey, we're friends and I love you. Are you okay? But if you see somebody at the store on a hover round and you think to yourself, you know what? If you were walking, that would probably be better for you. Maybe that's truth. But is it my place to walk up and go, hey, you should probably be walking instead of riding around on that little fatty go-kart? Like, no.
No, of course not.
No, because you're a jerk. So it's Gary Vaynerchuk, who has a lot of business wisdom, also is a real jerk sometimes. Like Gary, just like he got famous. He got famous busting people's balls when they would ask business questions by being a dick about it, right? Like he just did a jerk about it. Sorry, I'm really trying to work on that language wise.
Hey, Nancy, she said, I listen to you guys during the week, and each time you've dropped something a little off color comment, she's all in. So you're
well,
good.
yeah, but here's me telling the truth. I was talking to my wife this week, and I'm like, I am trying to clean up my language. A lot of people used to love that about me. They're like, oh, dude, I love that you just keep it real. To them, keeping it real was the fact that when I get revved up emotionally, my language gets very charged because I didn't become a guy who even knew Jesus until my adult life. So I had a lot of years of dropping F-bombs, and then I walked away and wasn't living even though I believed in him. So people would always, oh, dude, I love that you keep it real. Why? Because I said the F word. That makes it more real than if I didn't. And my good friend Andy Buck, who I love to death, said, you'll never offend someone not swearing. And I was like, hey, that's truth. He and I were having that dialogue, and he goes, you're never going to offend somebody by not dropping profanity, but you may lose some by it. And I learned a hard lesson when I was on LinkedIn before my social media exodus. I had a gentleman who listened to my lives every single day, and there was something that I got really revved up about, and just I got really frustrated about. I in the automotive industry, I hate when they take advantage of their salespeople and use them as free labor. Oh, we're going to go broom cars, we call it a lot party, and I got so angry about it, and I dropped a couple F-bombs, and in this video, and this guy messaged me and he said, "Man, I listen to you every day, and I was listening to this video as I was driving to work, and I had my son in the car, who I was dropping off to elementary school. And then you just blazed out these F-bombs and went on this." And I'm like, I messaged him back and I said, I am so sorry. I said, if you've listened to me before, I'm pretty sure it's not the first time you've heard me use that language. But that's not an excuse. I'm really trying to work on it. And I apologize to you and your son for that. That's the only thing I can do, right? And I say that because we like to mask, we like to use the excuse that, hey man, we're being honest because we're being blunt. No, sometimes you're just being a jerk. Absolutely. And there's a way to be straightforward with somebody and do it in love. And Jesus did it with everybody, save the Pharisees. Save for the people that acted like they were holier than thou. But he actually even did it in love. When it talks about the rich young man that came to him, when we were in Kalamazoo, we got to go to Radiant, and Pastor Lee Cummings, who was a great
It's
teacher.
so crazy because my church here is Radiant. You and I have had that conversation before.
Yeah.
You went to Radiant, and I go to Radiant, and they're two totally different ends of the world. And it's
it's awesome.
It is
well,
awesome.
and so there's an exception where Jesus was talking to someone who, by the way, he's described sounds like he was a Pharisee or a Sadducee, the rich young ruler who said, what do I have to do?
Can you hold that thought?
Yeah,
because Cody, just I want to acknowledge him while hopefully they'll stay here. Cody's headed out to go get hospital tests. So, bro, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you. And then Nancy, who said she listens to us during the week, she said, keep going. She's going to listen on the weekday walk. Real quick little plug here for anybody who is watching, whether you're watching live or you're watching the recording. We are on all of the podcast platforms also. So Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, Spotify.
iHeartRadio, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, iHeart comes. We should get approved. You have to be live, I think, for 4 weeks or whatnot. Total.
Hey, Cody, give us the good news, dude. After the docs,
absolutely.
Prayer works, man, and I'm looking forward to hearing some great things.
Absolutely, brother. So I apologize for the interruption, Matt, but I wanted to catch them because
you're good.
Given the courtesy to watch, and I think it's awesome. So
and going back to the question Bridge Services said about the bluntness, that rich young ruler. So we've seen Jesus go off in the Pharisees before and say, "Dude, you're like a manicured grave. You're dead inside." Basically, like, you guys are horrible. We see him going off. Your father's the devil, right? Like, we've seen him blast. And when the rich young ruler came. One of the things Pastor Lee at Radiant pointed out was he tried to gotcha Jesus. He when he asked that question, it was almost like what he wanted was Jesus to say, "Oh man, you are great. Look at what you did. Because he's like, hey, Jesus, what do I need to do to follow you? And he's like, well, keep the commands, do this. And he's like, I've done it all. And he he was waiting for Jesus to go, you are holy. And Jesus goes, great, there's one thing left. Just sell whatever you got and let's go. Let's roll. And he was like, and it says he went away sad. But you know what Jesus didn't do? He didn't go, you're a liar, man. You're so greedy. That would have been blunt. That would the Gary Vee approach. Dude, you're full of crap. You haven't done everything. Because you know what? You got a whole bunch of money. You haven't sold
still
that.
got your stuff. Got to sell it. Got to give it away.
You're not really following me, are you? You're full of crap. That's blunt. And today people would celebrate to be like, that's the G. I'll tell you. Oh man.
Anybody who's tuning in right now is watching Matt and like, they're like, what are these guys talking about, man?
I'm not going to on the air say the name, but somebody that we mutually know one time got into it with me because I said they had commented something when I said, look, I don't know how to handle what's going on with people out there. People are upset and they're hurt and they're angry and they're doing some things that they shouldn't do. Right. I don't know how to help them not be angry. All I know is we should be praying, right? Like they're hurt. We should be praying. This person who wears all these shirts like Jesus AF and like all that stuff because they think they're so funny. He had commented and was like, yeah, well, Jesus kicked over tables. And I'm like, that's what you're going to use to justify going and spewing hate at I said, Jesus said to love your enemy. Jesus getting stabbed and dying says, please forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. And I'm like, and you're going to say, but he kicked over a table. It's like, well, now let's look at context. What was going on? They were selling the sacraments. And that meant that the sacraments weren't even worthy of anything. And he was like, you're not going to do this in my father, in the sanctuary, in the synagogue. So when we look at stuff, it's like we see time and time again, Jesus' biggest thing was like taking the hard crap with the hardest people and being loving toward them. And it's like, when it comes to truth, I think we always have to temper against what's my motive for sharing this? It's the last intelligent thing I think I have.
Well, and I think we close on that thought. I think that is a very strong question for anybody when we're talking about truth. I think when you're talking directly to somebody, Matt brings a good point. What is my motive for sharing this? When you're talking about any of the other little white lies or the justification, because you said just a minute ago, we have this mutual friend, and it's like, oh, well, Jesus kicked over tables. There enter the human justification.
Yeah, right? And it was a true thing that he did, but the way that
absolutely
did it was to deceive people on a reason. I'm like, but what you're doing is you're lying about Jesus' behavior.
Right.
But there's just enough truth in it that you left out the context.
So enter, like we said, for anything, whether it's what's my motive in saying this, or just simply stop at the shorter sentence. What is the motive? If you ask that when you're sharing the truth, whether it's to somebody else, you shouldn't gossip and so forth. We could get into a much longer show, but as we finish tonight, for Matt, thank you for another really fun week, dude. I really enjoy these conversations and just having them live with you and engaging and having other people that participate with us. It's fantastic. It's really good. And so, again, we're at the end of a show. We're a little bit over an hour right now. And for anybody, again, if you've gained something out of this show, please share this. We're on Facebook and Twitch and LinkedIn and both of our YouTube channels. Like we're out there with this vodcast, our video podcast. And then if you're someone that listens, like Nancy, if you prefer the audio word, please tune in to us on the podcast on your favorite platform and share this with somebody that you think could stand to hear this message. That's our biggest thing. So with that, I think, Matt, I'm going to take us out on the cool I forgot to do this again at the beginning because I think this is a really cool deal. So for everybody watching, thank you guys so much. Hope you have a fantastic weekend, and God bless you all. We appreciate you, man.
Yeah, and Spencer, again, looking forward to hearing the good news, man. Message Mike, let him know. We're going to keep praying for you, dude. That's going to be it's going to be good news.
Talk to you soon, man.
Peace. Thanks, brother.